going to begin the meeting of August 16th, 2011. Board of Selectmen's business meeting. We have a special article on, well, not an article, but a special point of interest on one of it. So we'll treat that a little bit differently than we normally do. Roll call, everyone's here?
Yes, sir.
Would you all join me in the pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business, approval of minutes, August 2nd, 2011.
I move we approve the minutes as they were presented to us.
Discussion? All in favor? Okay, next up is the review of the special town meeting warrant for August 24th, 2011. It's been very contentious with townsfolk, and they have questions and comments, and so I'm going to try to treat this a little bit as a hearing, public hearing, but we're still going to, observe decorum and everything else. So, and once again, we started it last week. Anyone who wants to speak during this point or a public comment, they're coming to the podium. If you don't want to come to the podium, you're not going to speak. And I don't want to be harsh about that, but that's the way it's going to be. So I'm going to open up the this part of the business meeting for questions and comments about the special town meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
I'd just like to introduce to
Oh,
everybody
excuse me. Yes.
here this evening some of the folks that would be vital for us to answer your questions as we go through this public hearing process. We have sitting in the front David and Nathan Bateman, the developers of the Affordable Housing Project. And behind them we have the town attorney Alan Shepard. So as the chairman reads the warrant article, Article 2 and Article 3, please ask your questions through the chair, and whatever we can do to have those answered, we certainly will.
Okay, Article 1 would be to elect a moderator to preside over the meeting. Shouldn't be too much discussion on that, is there any? Article 2. Shall the selectmen for the town of Berwick be authorized to temporarily convey title to the Old Berwick High School and surrounding grounds on School Street to Sullivan School Associates LP or a related entity for the purpose of allowing the remediation of confirmed environmental contamination as part of the redevelopment of the property, with the title conveyed back to the town when the remediation is completed within 180 days as required for the federal funding for remediation. And I will open it up there. Right here.
Mr. Chairman, I thought it would be helpful just because I've been engaged in these discussions with the Board of Selectmen, just to maybe explain to the public that may be interested, even though they're at my back here. I'm sorry about that. Just a little bit of the procedure why these warrant articles are necessary.
You can turn around if you want to.
All right, thank
because
you.
you're speaking to all of them.
Good. As I understand it, there was a vote originally for the town to authorize a 75-year lease of the Sullivan School to allow the redevelopment of the property for affordable housing. And that's pretty much, with that town vote and authority, the Batemans proceeded to get what approvals they needed to do this project like they had proposed to do. Unfortunately, Maine State Housing Authority, which is the entity that's overseeing the affordable housing component of this, because of their internal requirements, was going to require a 99-year lease rather than a 75-year lease. So that happened after the fact, and that's why this has to go back to the voters, just to modify that initial authority. And then also, once, and Keith can probably speak a little bit more to the procedure on this, once they got into the project, it was discovered that there was some environmental problems with it. And the Batemans were willing to take on the remediation of it. If they didn't do it, the town would have to do it. And in order to do that, one of the things that was available to them was some federal funding through a fund called the Brownfield Fund. Well, as you can imagine, anything involving the federal government involves a fair amount of red tape and certain specific requirements and procedures that the federal government requires, one of which is we're not going to give money to an entity to do remediation unless they own the property. In other words, they don't want to give it to a tenant, they want to give it to an owner. Now, I believe the Batemans, have you been involved in this kind of situation where you had to take temporary? So what they proposed, and seemed to make sense to the Board of Selectmen, since there was a fair amount of money to remediate this, was to agree for just a short period of time to convey title to the Batemans to give them the ability to get this federal funding with an agreement that has been worked out that they're going to convey it right back within 180 days. And there is a date certain that they have to convey it by. Now, it's not going to take 180 days to do this remediation. So it may be a matter of several weeks or a month. Once it's all done and it's inspected, it's going to get conveyed back. So the deal changed just a little bit, and that's the background as to why the Board of Selectmen have to go back to the townspeople and have a special meeting in order to get the authority to do that. So I just wanted to let people know that's the background for why you have these two warrant articles.
You all set? Anything you want to add to that at this point? You all set?
No, I think you did. You did a very good job.
All right, we'll start in the back. And as usual, please state your name.
Tom Levine. Just a couple of issues of clarity, actually. Both articles, can they reflect more specifically rather than surrounding grounds? The lease, as I read it, calls out excluded parcels, but yet the warrants only reflect a vague terminology of surrounding grounds, both Article 2 and 3. And then last, I would just like to address I understand your statement about conveying the title, but even as you say it, and maybe it's me, but it doesn't seem to sit well with me that in order for a group to qualify for funding, they need title. So we're going to temporarily give title. And once they get the funding, they're going to give it back. One, I'd like the language to also reflect an automatic conveyance with a specific date, because frankly, the lease doesn't have a certain date, as you mentioned. It says on or about or approximate when the work is complete. And that's really kind of open-ended, because things come up. So I think it should be automatic on a certain date. And if the environmental work isn't complete, then I think it's the responsibility of the developers to come to you and say, these are the issues, whether they be labor or supply, that were out of our control, and we're going to need to extend beyond the automatically certain date. But last, the point being, I just feel it's deceptive to convey a title to make someone qualify for funds, and after they get them, they get the title back. I'm not sure how many other arenas that would actually apply in, because it seems that you're either playing the rules, which again I understand, or it could be interpreted that it's intentionally to deceive those that administer the grants, because that is their rule, you have to own it. So if you say, well, you're gonna own it for 10 days so you can get your money. But most importantly, the language in the warrants, I hope it will reflect what's excluded, as the lease does, what's included, more so than just surrounding grounds, because that's 10.2 acres, that whole area. I understand the lease calls out the police station as excluded. I'm also not sure what the development parcel is. Is that something to do with the Bateman project, the adjacent on the exhibit?
The development parcel is the school that they'll be working on.
Well, there's an adjacent development parcel?
No.
Sure.
Well, I think it's in,
It's just a clarification. I don't have my glasses on.
See if you can explain it, please. What was this question, Keith?
On the map, there was some arrows that were
Thank you.
pointing, and the wording was down on the corner, and the arrows pointed to the development parcel. And it looked a little confusing that it may have included other parcels, which it does not. And then the school premises, which is the piece of the building development.
I actually had one clarification that I think I probably should have mentioned, and Tom brought up an excellent point regarding this.
Stand up and talk to the, you
Absolutely,
can face the people.
that's terrific. One point of clarification.
Your name, sir?
My name is Nathan Bateman, excuse me, with Bateman Partners, I apologize for protocol. But to answer Tom's question of why we're going down this route of dealing with a transfer of title for this period of 180 days. And what it really comes through by the simple fact of this. The Brownsfield funds have funds for two different types of funding. One is a grant, which is just monies that are given to owners of properties or nonprofits or municipalities to help remediate and clear up environmental issues. The second are funds that are used as a loan for for-profit developers like ourselves. Obviously, grant is money giveaway, which is just free money. A loan is money that has to be paid back. The threshold question to qualify for that, however, is that when that entity, whether it be a nonprofit or a for-profit, takes possession of the property, they have to have a phase one, which is a phase one environmental. Now, unfortunately, when the town of Berwick took ownership from the school district of the school property, a phase one was never completed. So by default, they neither qualified for grant money or loan money, and there's no way that was going to change. So the conveyance was actually recommended to us by Southern Maine Regional Planning. They've done it in other municipalities where the same thing happened, where a municipality took ownership of a property, never took a phase one, so instantaneously were thrown out. So by using this mechanism of conveyance for 180 days, all of a sudden we qualified for not grant money, but loan money for the remediation period. And that was strictly recommended to us by the agency itself of the gain access to these brownfield funds. So that was it in a nutshell. The minimum threshold of holding that is 180 days, and that's why it's exactly that, is 180 days to remediate and then convey back to simply gain access to federal funds to do good works and clean up. The unfortunate thing is if the town would have, in its foresight at the time, done a phase one, there would have been grant monies available, i.e. federal funds to pay for this that would not have to be paid back or come in through private development to pay for. So that was just wanted to clarify why the rationale was there. It's not a deceptive nature, it's a statutory qualification that was outlaid to us and that Southern Maine Regional Planning made us painfully aware of and had recommended this route to move forward with those funds. Hope that answers questions.
Alan?
Okay,
and I just wanted to answer Tom's other question. Back there. All right. There's a
Tell
two-page,
everybody.
there's a two-page agreement. The lease doesn't get executed until we get the property back. So the two-page agreement that we have saying we're gonna convey it back has a date certain. We weren't even gonna put the reconveyance in the agreement, but the attorney for the Maine State Housing Authority, who was just someone who likes everything put in there, put that language in the lease. But the reconveyance agreement has a February 18th, 2012 date that they have to convey the property back. And they're gonna sign the deed. At the time we sign the deed to them, they're gonna sign the deed, and the deed's gonna be given to me in escrow. So I have the authority on February 18th to record that deed and take title back, if the mediation for some unforeseen reason doesn't go through.
I was just asking that it be included in the warrant.
Excuse me,
Okay.
And let me also make a comment, it's very difficult, I mean, that's why we wanted to make these documents available, it's very difficult. You know, this is not an easy transaction to wrap your mind around, and there's only so much you can put in the warrant article. So I think that, you know, the best that you can do is to just give general descriptions, and then people that have a more particular question, either before the town meeting or at the town meeting, can ask and people can explain. But I think that if we started going into specificity on, you know, what you're selling and what you're leasing, there's several components of it that I think would make it too wordy. It's already pretty wordy to begin with, so that was the choice to word the warrant article. That wasn't the selectman that did it, was my office along with the Bateman's attorneys that drafted up the warrant articles.
Mr. Levine, are you all set with that?
Also, thank you.
Over here, please.
Steve Twombly. I've been involved in some real estate transactions before. And part of the boilerplate usually is in a deed, and I assume this is a deed. Part of the boilerplate usually is that the grantor releases and quits claim forever to the premises. I hope that is not in this deed that we're giving these people, because it gives us no right to get the property back, if that wording is in there. I've never heard of a deed that was temporary. I've heard of leases that are temporary, but never a deed. I would like an explanation at the town meeting, the actual wording of the conveyance to be available to be voted on. Thank you.
Alan, do you have anything
Well,
tonight?
certainly I could give you a preview of what may be said at the town meeting. You can't convey half the title, so title is gonna be conveyed. But we have an agreement that is an enforceable agreement to get title back.
Are we releasing quit claiming forever?
We are deeding the property, in other words, we are deeding the property, the Batemans own it, or the entity they've created is gonna own this property. But they have an obligation because they're signing an agreement, like you would if you owned a piece of property and you agreed to sell it, they're agreeing that they're gonna convey it back. And as I told you, they're delivering the deed, conveying it back to the town's attorney, and I will have the authority to record the deed by this agreement on the date, February 17th. But we anticipate that it's going to be conveyed back within a matter of weeks or a month once the work is done.
Rather than anticipation, what guarantee does the town have that it's gonna get the property back?
The town doesn't have a guarantee, it's a written word. And, you know, it's like any other document, it has to be enforced. But we're not reinventing the wheel here, this has been done other times.
And that's
These
where?
Where?
Excuse me,
Where? Where is it been done like
All
that?
right, I think you have to be called upon by the chair to speak.
you want to speak anymore? One more question from you, sir. We got other people who want to speak. You got one more question?
I've spoken.
Okay.
All right. My understanding of Southern Maine, I don't know personally, it certainly hasn't been involved in the towns that I represent, but it has been done before. This isn't anything that's unusual. These are not gentlemen that are just cracking into the business of redevelopment. They've done it many times, so They have a reputation that precedes them. That's the reason why Main State Housing picked them, to allow them to do this. It was a process that they had to go through to qualify for this program. It was a competitive process, so as far as the town's concerned, we're dealing with reputable people.
Keith, at any time, you feel free to speak. Somebody was over here earlier, maybe the front, by the post.
There's several things that I want to bring up. First, in recent discussions with the town and with the board and in investigations, we've been talking about ethics and scrupulous business deals. And I would ask you all to consider, is this really an ethical and scrupulous business deal that you are asking the town folks, good folks, who have a certain expectation here that may or may not be delivered, to vote on? In all confidence, we're taking a recommendation from you that this is legal, that this is a proper way to do something, when it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense that we're transferring title of land for a short period of time for a company to benefit from funding. Just doesn't sound right, doesn't shake out right, and it doesn't sound ethical. So I hope that you are all confident with what we've been dealing with recently, that this is what we should be recommending to our people. The other thing, when it comes to this development, I think there's been some misinformation too. I've often heard this development described as the same thing they have in South Berwick. This is not the same thing that they have in South Berwick. There are different levels of affordable housing, okay? And this is not what they would refer to, and I may get the terms wrong, but of median cost housing, which is what I believe they do have in South Berwick. This is low income housing, meaning if you go to work and you make a certain amount, you no longer qualify for the housing. This is a different deal, and I've heard good people from the town tell me I'm wrong. This is the same thing that South Berwick has. I don't believe that's true, and I don't believe we've been clear with everybody in town as to what we're bringing. What I'd like to ask from you, Keith, from the town manager, is your own financial analysis of what this project is going to bring in for town income and what this is going to cost the town and the residents of the town. You can do a projection for children in school, perhaps some of that's already been done. You can give a projection for service cost, and you can give a projection for what we expect to take in for tax income from this, because that's how this has been sold as something good for Berwick. So I would like for town meeting to know what the benefit's gonna be. What is that cost benefit? Where's it shifting? Why is this so good? I'd also like to know how much of this project is being funded with taxpayer dollars and how much of it is private development funds. Finally, when it comes to the transfer of the title, we shouldn't consider it without a transfer of funds. So we get paid for the land for the 180 days, full value. You guys have talked about how we're gonna sell land in the future. Maybe we follow those rules. We're going to get paid at least fair market value, plus a little, and then in 180 days, we're gonna pay back. There needs to be a transfer of funds for some accountability for this whole transaction so that we can be protected. We're not in a position that we need to give away the farm here. And then Finally, Article 3 that we'll be asking the town to vote on gives the select board great broad flexibility. If that's passed, it shows the townspeople are putting a lot of stock in faith in you, the select board, because we're not binding the lease term to anything in the warrant. We're giving you open rein to negotiate a lease in good faith with the best interest of the town financially and fiscally and for everything at heart. And with other things that have been talked about recently with ethics and being scrupulous, I hope we're all very comfortable where we sit right now as we go forward. With you promising that this is passed, we will have that and we can expect that from you. Thank you.
Keith, a response or?
Right now, the other projections in terms of, you know, the units and, you know, what kind of children will be there, that would certainly be speculation on our part, and we can try to provide some good information to that. In terms of tax dollars being spent on this, yeah, the project itself, there is no tax dollars. The only tax dollars that we have outlay at this point would be for Attorney Shepherd's services in assisting us in development of the project. And that would be it at this point. I'll continue to research that. If I can't find something else, I'll certainly report that to you on the 24th prior to the vote.
Can,
No, we gotta move on. Other people wanna speak. You all set at this point? Wait a minute, I missed someone over here first. I think it was Jeanette.
Oscar's been waiting a lot longer than me, Jim, if you
Okay.
don't mind.
Yes, yeah, the white shirt.
Oh, I didn't think you recognized me. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got a whole bunch of questions.
Well, I ask a few.
Keith, you want to explain to me, again, explain to this crowd, I'm looking at the map for Bateman Brothers. It shows 2.14 acres, and that says that's a school premises. Okay? What is that?
That is the site that's going to be utilized by the developer for development, for the housing, affordable housing project.
Okay, and what is the development premises?
The development premises is the remaining parcel of, I think it's over another 10 acres or so.
Another 10? How much?
Yeah, it has to be provided, part of the ground lease, as a result of our density requirements by ordinance for the housing.
How big is that entire lot? Don't look at them guys, Keith, you own it.
Oscar,
No, you.
please.
Okay, what I'm saying, you guys own it, you look at somebody else for the answer. How big is that lot?
It's a little over 10 acres.
A little over 10, so this development site here is not a little over 10 acres then. It's gotta be about 8 acres if you've already given away 2 acres. Is that not correct?
Well, all I'm telling you is that the development site, it has to be provided in the ground lease as a result of the density requirements of the ordinance.
And I understand that perfectly. Okay, now you have on here 5,000 square feet excluded for police/community. What is that?
That's the buildings that we have there now.
The minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet per whatever's going on there. So why don't we have 10,000 square feet for the police station? Which is what our ordinance requires.
Well, that was all reviewed by the planning board, and the planning board signed off on all of that.
No, Keith. Come on.
Excuse me?
And if you do this math here, you don't have enough